If we put a lot of time and effort into what we actually believe in, how we're going to operate as leaders, we're already better than the vast majority of leaders. So I think honestly, it's one of those things where imposter syndrome is, or if we don't feel quite up to the task, we're going to constantly work to be good enough to be doing the task. And that's the real.
Welcome to Leading Veterinary Teams, the podcast for people-first leaders in veterinary medicine who are ready to ditch the burnout script and lead with purpose. I'm Suzanne Thomas, veterinary technician, coach, and fellow leader in the trenches. Around here, we talk real-life leadership, boundaries, influence, team culture, and what it actually takes to build happy, high-performing hospitals. No fluff, no guilt, just the truth, some tools, and maybe a little tough love. If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Leading Veterinary Teams on Air. I'm your host, Suzanne Thomas, and today I'm joined by someone who truly embodies what's possible in this profession. Kelly Cronin and I first connected on LinkedIn, and I knew she wasn't just another powerhouse technician. She's someone who understands the medicine, yes, but also the business and the people behind it. And honestly, anyone who decides continuing education should happen on a cruise ship instantly earns my attention. Because why shouldn't leadership development come with ocean views, right? Kelly brings 30 years of veterinary experience across just about every role you can imagine, from emergency and critical care to vice president of operations for multi-million-dollar specialty hospitals. She's a VTS and ECC, holds an MBA. She's coached leaders, built training programs, grown hospitals, and driven culture change where it matters most, on the floor. She's also an author, a national speaker, the creator of VetTech Life's CE on the Sea. That's a mouthful. And the owner of a couple of exciting businesses outside veterinary medicine that I can't wait to dig into. Kelly, it is truly a pleasure to have you here. Is there anything that you can't do?
A lot of things. Stay
Yeah.
task-oriented, stay organized. I will 100% say that, you know, I know you feel the pain, but I have ADD, so I'm everywhere. So I do everything mediocrely and not everything perfectly, but, perfect is the enemy of done.
For people who don't know about you, where did leadership start with you? What's the first moment that you realized that being a technician was bigger for you than just the medicine?
I am absolutely certain that I came to leadership like most people. I was a very good technician. I could place a catheter in a pruny cat from 20 yards away. The big ramification for that is that you become a lead technician, right? Because clearly placing an IV catheter in a pruny cat from 20 yards is absolutely the standard of how we choose our leaders who now have to give progress reviews and performance corrections and do all of the things that leadership actually does. And I think honestly, like coming into a leadership role, either, my first role was a office manager for a very small practice. My second leadership role was lead technician at a larger emergency practice. It has been one of those situations where you kind of always look around and wonder, why me? But it's something we all get thrown into, and we can either choose, and this is where superpowers collide, and imposter syndrome is a huge superpower, is we can decide, are we gonna be the people who are mediocre in a role or figure out where our strengths and weaknesses are and align everything to support the role that we're coming into?
Yeah, and so I guess let's take it back just a little bit. You got your VTS in emergency critical care, I assume, before you went into leadership.
No, no.
Oh, okay.
If we're talking about the real start of leadership, I was a shift lead early on in my career. When I was 18, 19 years old. I think I struggle bus through that and became an office manager when I was not very old. It's tough to map the times without a resume in front of me, but I kind of shifted in and out of leadership quite a bit. as I'd go from, one clinic to the next. And honestly, I think part of that was I really love doing both leadership and technical work. And so either of those made me really happy. Once I started into, shall we say, like the lead technician and then to a practice manager role, things started really growing in terms of my leadership roles. After that, went from being a lead technician to a multi-site manager to helping start MVP and growing our clinic group from 5 to 15 and then to 40 when we became corporate, managing 18 really large spec and ERs for Ethos, and then into a couple of de novo practices on the East Coast, and really had a really fun career of moving from different sizes to different roles, either starting up new practices or making things more efficient for large practices. Really, everything carries its own set of challenges, and so I've just really enjoyed kind of
Yeah.
soireeing into that.
So, talk to me about why, if you were doing all of that in leadership, why go the route of getting your VTS, and how has that helped your leadership?
So part of what I've always done is I've always looked at my life and said, "Hey, how do I structure my life in a way that supports the things that I want out of life?" Every couple of years, I will sit down and write down the things that are the most important to me at that time. And things shift a little bit, right? As we get older, our feelings about things change. Back when I was a lead technician in Santa Fe, one of the top things on my list was travel. And one of the top things on my list was educating other people, carrying on the education I had gotten and giving that to others. And one of the things that I really wanted to do to support those two goals was get my VTS in order to really legitimize myself and speaking and really allow me to feel on the imposter syndrome scale as though I had sufficient knowledge to impart to other people. And so at that point, I had a really strong mentor in my hospital, my practice administrator, and she introduced me to the idea of a PHR, professional in human resources certification, and she introduced me to the idea of getting an MBA. She supported my growth into a VTS role. And so I will absolutely say that I was working on my VTS, found out that I was pregnant and that I was about to have my daughter, and decided that I've never had time off work like that before. And that time being home with her after she was born, I was clearly going to get a lot of stuff done. So I started on the MBA program and scheduled myself to take a PHR exam. I don't think anyone has ever seen anyone come in for a PHR exam with infant on hip, but we did all the things. I applied for my VTS that year, and off to the races we were. What am I gonna do with myself for 3 months?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I know,
I will
right?
tell you
Like,
that mat
I'm
leave
not gonna
did
be
not last 3
busy at
whole
all.
months.
Yeah, I won't be busy at all,
No,
feeding children.
no, no.
Oh my gosh. When you were running the operations of multiple hospitals at the specialty level, what did you notice most about the hospitals that were getting, like, I assume that you noticed some things that hospitals were getting wrong about team dynamics, right? In all of your experience, were there themes that you noticed that people were getting wrong? What were the things that really stood out to you?
I think the biggest thing is that we put a lot of faith into the team members who can do all of the things. If someone is doing all of the things, but they're not training all of the things to other people, that is inherently a problem. And if we put them on a pedestal to the point where, hey, this person can't leave ever because they can do all the things, we're not strengthening the rest of our team. There's actually a really great TED Talk. Margaret Hernanen, I think is her name. She does a really great TED Talk about something called the super chicken. And I got introduced to this TED Talk, I should say, and instantly resonated with what that looks like. And it's really about the idea of, hey, if you have a herd of flock a flock of chickens. If you have a flock of chickens and one chicken is overproducing and eating all the grain to do it and has the brightest feathers, the rest of the flock is not doing well. But if you have a flock that's doing all comparatively similarly, you're actually going to, as a whole flock, produce more eggs, produce more chicks, produce, better looking chickens in general. And so one of the things that I think we have inherently done in veterinary medicine is created silos in individual team members. Honestly, we perpetuate that ourselves, right? If we are feeling a little bit like, man, I'm worried about my role, I'm worried about continually growing my role. If we come from a scarcity mindset where we feel like, hey, if I give away some of my role to someone else, I'm going to have less of a role and they're not going to need me. If we run from that scarcity victimhood mindset of I have to be really protective, we are never going to be as good as we possibly can. The real strength in what we can do in vet med is if we can come from an abundance mindset of, hey, there's always going to be more work, especially if we do a really good job of it. If we have top notch medicine, if everyone on our team is really taking care of our clients in the best way possible, we're going to have more work to do. And we're going to constantly have that job security as opposed to, hey, I better not teach anyone else how to do X, Y, or Z, or hey, I better really be specific about someone not stepping on my toes. If we come from that scarcity mindset, we're just gonna continually and perpetually be lesser than. We're not gonna do as well for our teams, not gonna do as well for our clinics. And honestly, when we see really fast turnover on the technical or the CSR or the VA side or even on the doctor side, like, I really wonder how much of that is being driven by the fact that we are very graspy about our roles, very unlikely to really try and train other team members, and I think we get stuck in the whole conversation of license allowance and things like that. I'm very, very very, very in tune with if a state does not allow this, but I think up until that point, as long as someone is either learning or in school or working towards their licensing or whatever that looks like, I want to make sure that they're given every opportunity to succeed in whatever that task is. I wanna make sure that I'm giving them as many tasks as I can possibly do that's within the scope of their license in order to allow our teams to feel very fulfilled that they're getting things done, and to B, make sure that our teams are being really effectual.
So, whose responsibility is it? There's this duality almost. There's the leaders who have to make sure that those things aren't happening, but the leaders can't be there all the time.
Yep.
And then there's the people that are actually on the floor every day who are feeling their feelings about, oh my gosh, my role might be at stake. How do we get past that? What do we do about that?
Well, I think we all have an individual responsibility to look at how we actually operate. I will 1000% tell you that I have absolutely been caught in the I can do it better myself. I can do it faster myself. I feel bad about asking this person to do X, Y, and Z. But the reality is, if you look around your practice, every single person in that practice can do one thing better than you. I guarantee it. And I think we as leaders, it's our responsibility to figure out what they can do better than us and delegate it off. And I think it's our responsibility to do a good look around and say, hey, what would they like to do better? And delegate those things. One of the things that I think we're not great at doing is I love to classify things into A, B, and C tasks. A tasks being things that we're not only good at, but we also truly, truly enjoy doing. B tasks being the things that we are either good at or that we enjoy doing. C tasks being the things that we are neither good at nor do we enjoy doing. And finding the best person in our purview to do the C tasks, we in leadership, we in management, we don't have to know how to do all the things, we have to know how to delegate all the things to be done, right? One of the things that we struggle with is Is this person going to feel put upon if I delegate something? Is this person going to feel overworked if I delegate it out to someone? We have to really trust the fact that our team members can do more, can accomplish more, can see more, need to know more, that type of thing. Fairly often, we tend to delegate out, right? Watch it be done potentially not up to what we're expecting without us having given them any kind of parameters as to what we needed it to look like. What is the first rule of delegating? If you delegate it and it doesn't work and they don't do it right, you take it back and you do it yourself, right? It's a terrible rule. It's a terrible rule because that doesn't give them the
Yeah.
opportunity to actually grow in that task, whatever it happens to be. And can you imagine what that feels like to be given something and then pulled back? Given something and then pulled back. It's a really devastating type of cycle for our teams.
Yeah. I am taking this group dynamics class, and our assignment this week was to fill out this leadership checklist. I filled it out and I thought that I aced the thing. I was like, I'm amazing, you know. It came back that I got an A, but in 2 subsections, I actually got a B, and I was like, "Interesting." So I dug a little bit, and the 2 areas were basically that saying that I disagreed that when I don't know something, I won't take the risk in, like, doing it, essentially saying that for me, I will take on the task even if I don't know how to do it because I'll figure it out, and what it was saying is that that is not a positive leadership quality, and in my mind, my initial reaction was like, "What do you mean that's not a positive leadership quality?" As I continued to dig in and read, it was like, well, on the surface, it appears that way, but what it's creating is 1, overextending yourself, but 2, it's not creating a space to allow your team to get to that next level. It's
Yeah.
not allowing your team to actually get to that next level where they're able to grow and become leaders themselves, and because you're still the focus, you're still the one doing the work. I was like, "Huh, oh, I am, aren't I?" And so it put the mirror back on me of, "Oh, damn, I'm doing it. I'm still doing it." And yeah, so it really is important as a reminder that even as much as we know, as much as we do, as much as I think that I can figure anything out, sometimes it's important to step back and let the team figure it out. Let them find the answer because maybe the answer isn't what I thought it was, but also maybe their answer will wind up better than whatever I thought was the answer, right?
I think one of the things we tend to do, and I will tell you that I listened to a really good lecture the other day at DVM Grow about learned helplessness. It was an incredible lecture because it really highlighted what that looks like to our teams. Where I really enjoyed coming after that lecture is giving out the idea of how we get away from that. And one of the things we have to think about is how do we celebrate our problem solvers? Do we celebrate them by saying, "Oh, that was fantastic. You should have done it this way"? Or do we celebrate it in a way that overshadows the fact that we might do it differently? Because honestly, everyone's gonna do everything differently. That's just how it
Yeah.
is. Unless you have an SOP to say how to place a catheter, someone's gonna tab their tape and someone's not. And so when we're thinking about this, we have to be really cautious about beating down the folks who are problem solvers and be really cautious about making an army of problem solvers within our practice because let's face it, every single day something is different than what we were trained how to do in school, right? There's just a really big swath of things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and when you think about all of the things that our technical team or our doctor team are doing, that list is pretty endless. If they feel like they can't go off the script to fix something for a client or a patient, how are they going to actually get to the point of doing best medicine? Medicine is constantly evolving. I love thinking about being a why clinic, not a how clinic, right? A how clinic shows you how to place that catheter. You have that SOP. A why clinic tells you why you do the target scrub, why you do 3-chlorhexidine and 3-alcohol, why alcohol doesn't denature chlorhexidine like we used to be taught when we were 12. And like when we're thinking about these things, the why culture gives us enough information about whatever we're doing that we can apply our own logic to why we might do something a little bit differently, right? Like, hey, here is best practices and here is why we do best practices so that if we somehow can't do best practices, it allows us to do the very, very best for that patient, for ourselves, for our clinic, for the medicine, even in a situation where maybe we can't do the very pinnacle of what we've always been taught to do.
Yeah. I like that. I think giving people the why behind what we're doing is really important. I think the other piece for me at least is getting curious, right? And that is in general, not just clinically. If you don't know something, asking and asking more questions, not in a way that's like, why are you doing that? Because that creates this amygdala response, but more so in the way of seeking understanding because I don't know everything. So tell me more about where that comes from because I learned it this way. Tell me that. I remember being an oncology technician and working with one oncologist for 5 years and then working with a different oncologist and he did things differently. And then I called the old oncologist and was like, he's treating this way. And she was like, yeah, there's other ways to treat it. And I was like, oh my God, there are, you know? And so like just being open to realizing that there's different ways to do different things and that's transferable in leadership and clinically.
And have you ever heard the quidditch, like, teach, don't tell? I think when we
Yeah.
think about teaching instead of telling, people are gonna be much more open to hearing whatever we have to say, and it becomes a dialogue as opposed to anything that might be talking down to someone or anything that might be, kind of a repose, right? Instead of feedback, I like to think of things as feed forward. I want to have an opportunity to elevate everyone every time I'm having that conversation with them, whether it be feedback or insights as to why something might be easier if they do it this way or that way. And so when I'm thinking about this, I'm always thinking about, hey, how can I make sure that my tone is one of teaching? How can I make sure that my responses are coming from a good headspace, not only for me, but for the person I'm talking to? If they're really flustered by something, and I come in and try and teach them how to do something, are they gonna be able to take that home? Probably not, right? So sometimes when someone's really flustered by something, coming in and saying, "Hey, do you mind if I get this for you?" And afterwards, we're gonna have a little debrief, and once the pain and the frustration associated with what you were just doing subsides, let's talk about ways that we could do this just a little bit smarter so that you don't get stuck in a tough situation, right? And if we
Yeah.
come from that place of understanding, maybe we would not drive so many people to frustration within the veterinary clinics. And I think, you and I, we both started back on working on dinosaurs once upon a time. You're younger than me, but still, it's definitely one of those things where when you've been around this long, like you have to give tools to our younger teams so that they can
Yeah.
have a really long and longevity filled life in veterinary medicine. Honestly, if we're talking down to them or making it somehow belittling for them to get information, how is that ever going to make sure that they can stay in this role?
What do you say to the person who's not necessarily the leader in the situation? I would love to be able to touch the lives of every leader and every person in a leadership role, formally and informally, and tell them that these are the things that you need to be doing. But in reality, a lot of the people that I wind up talking to are the people that are experiencing the people who are mistreating them
Yeah.
and the leaders that are not responding well and not doing the things we're saying they should be doing. And they're like, that sounds great, but that's not what my leader does. So, what do you say to them?
I think one thing to say to them is to really have some self examination because fairly often, especially when leaders are trying to give them good feedback. If you're not in a place where you're actually opening yourself up to hearing and taking that, it might sound as though this leader is coming off as tougher than they are. If you're not doing self-examination to really look at, hey, how have I contributed to the problem? It may feel like you're targeted from your leadership. So I think that's the first step. If you are feeling at all like you're in a role where you're getting targeted or belittled, first start with self examination. Honestly, there are so many times where I've had someone come to me and say, gosh, I really feel like this person just has it in for me. You talk to the person in leadership, and they have nothing but the best intent for this person.
Mhm.
And you get to experience some of the interactions, and you're like, wow, that is not how you characterize that. I think you're not being open to the feedback you can get. Now, after that period of self-examination, if you're dealing with a leader who's tough, we can actually help those leaders out, right? We don't have to lead from a position of leadership. I will absolutely say that I've recently, not so long ago, had a leader who was unfortunately very abusive and abrasive, borderline yelling at me, and utilizing body language to effectively close me off, and it was definitely a situation where, psychologically, that wasn't a hugely safe place for me to be. And so when I'm thinking about that type of thing, my first and foremost thought process is, how do I diffuse and ensure that I've given this leader as much feedback as I can about how this is actually affecting me in a safe way, right? So, how can I say, I need you to change the way that you're talking to me if we're going to continue this conversation? And here's the other thing with that, like, my my ability to stay in a role is not as important as my ability to stay sane. When we value a role more than we value, you know, our life and our sustainability of our life, and, what we're actually putting time and effort to, if we're not honoring ourselves in what
Yeah.
that looks like, we are not doing a very good job of it. So we have to say, it is not as important for me to be in a role as it is for me to be respected as a human being, referred to calmly, spoken to in a way that's actually forward movement, and being in a productive work relationship. Do
Yeah.
I psychologically provide that for myself? Because I will tell you that sometimes you go to leadership, even leadership above leadership, and you don't always have that kind of support, right?
Yeah.
With one of my roles, I went through 8 different leaders just above me in my line leadership, and some good, some bad. There were some that did not respect my time. I'm pretty available at all times and a bit of a workhorse. I will work hard for whatever I'm doing. It was a situation where I recognized that, that honestly, I wanna do well for my role, but I had to be very stand up on my own behalf. Guys, if you're dealing with this right now, if you have someone who is potentially not respecting you, not respecting your time, not respecting, like, the boundaries that you need after self-examination where you've really looked at yourself and said, "Hey, I am not the problem." Really have that conversation and lay it out there. "Hey, I don't wanna be a victim in this, but this is my boundary. I am not gonna just gripe about it. I'm gonna set my boundary in stone and ensure that I'm safe coming out of this." Being in vet med for this long, our mental health is so incredibly important. No job is worth that.
Yeah. What I like about what you said, there's a lot, but I think the one thing that holds true for me is that boundary. In my experience, you have to look inwardly also, like at what part of this, because it's any relationship is twofold, right? Like there's not one side.
Right.
It's not just what they're doing to me. It's also what responsibility do I have in this relationship? And what am I doing to make it better or worse? What is my part in this? Have I done anything to try to make it better?
Mhm.
Am I giving this person grace, the benefit of the doubt? Have I had a conversation? Have I tried anything? Do they even know how I feel? I think if I have explored all of the options, and to the person who's like, well, I shouldn't have to manage my manager, because I will say I have been that person. There are books on managing up. I think that there is some level of sometimes you do, right?
Mhm.
And I've had to explore that. But at the end of the day, I've had to sit down with myself in the mirror, quite literally, and say, at what point, what is my boundary? At what point is it no longer worth it for me? And at what point do I have to say that this is too toxic, if you will, that it is no longer serving me to be in this place? And you just have to make that decision. And if you're in a place where you're like, you know what, whatever it is that this person is doing is not affecting me enough to matter, it's not changing who I am. I know who I am. Whatever their issue is their issue. Then stay. You're still able to be effective. You're still able to be a happy person. You're still able to do your thing. But if it is affecting who you are, then, like you said, it's not worth it.
Right.
Like, there are people out there like you, like me, that are proving every single day that there are leaders in this industry, in this profession, that care about their people.
I think a lot of it is intent, right? Like,
Yeah,
if someone comes in with great intent, you give them that benefit of the doubt of, hey, they really have the intent to change things. They're going about it poorly, whatever that
yeah.
looks like, but they have good intent. And to some extent, you give them enough grace about the intent they have. But if they are causing you any type of emotional stress and pain, you really have to set boundaries on what that looks like.
I think about how much leadership training there is, and then I think about why there's so much leadership training,
Yeah.
just in general, how much training, mentorship, and information overload, how many books there are. Like, you can go to a bookstore and a library, and it is riddled with leadership content. It's because there's clearly an issue in leadership. So for me, when I see a leader who is struggling, if there is a leader who is struggling, but their intent and their heart is good, to me, I'm like, they just, maybe they're on their leadership journey, haven't gotten to the place where they know what to do yet, right? They haven't gotten the right book. They're not on that page yet, and they're just not there. The question for me is, am I willing to wait till they get there?
Yeah.
Am I willing to help them get there? I don't know, but it depends on what's happening. But if their intent and their heart is good, then let's see. But if they are like not willing to try, they don't care, they're not looking to try to be better, they're just coming in like, I'm the authoritarian and what I say goes, and I don't really care about you. Well, then I'm not here for that.
I will say, though, keep this in mind with anyone who has a lens towards leadership. I have a slide in one of my decks. Actually, I think it's in multiple decks, to be honest with you. And it says, one week they love me, one week they hate me, both weeks I get paid.
Mm,
There's a piece to things that when leaders are leaders, they not only have to lead their teams, but they also have to lead their business.
mhm,
And I will absolutely tell you that there are times where I have had tough decisions between the business and the people.
mhm.
And I think honestly, there's a lot of times where I have to outwardly support things that I don't necessarily inwardly believe. And
Yeah,
honestly, it's one of those situations where it causes you that moment of, is this more than what I'm willing to do? Or is this within, we have to think about, hey, if we don't keep the doors open, we're doing no one any good. And so I really think that there are a lot of things that leaders have in the back of their minds that we have to give them grace for. We have to understand that they're not going to always make us the happiest. Had a recent employee, I kind of appreciated the back and forth banter. I really appreciated the opportunity to potentially help this person through. I had to cut ways. There's too much escalation. One particular escalation over a weekend to another employee, I had to cut ties. And backward, forward, and in between, he's told every person in the wide, wide world that I'm the worst manager and taking the company down is the worst thing that has ever happened to anyone. It's one of those situations where we as leaders have to realize that sometimes there are going to be people who do not agree with what we've had to do or who we are or, how we've handled a situation. We have to be able to say, "Hey, I have weighed everything that comes into this situation as well as I possibly can. I've looked at the front and back of this situation 20 times, and I've made a decision." We have to have faith in the decisions that we've made, even if they're not the popular ones.
Yeah, because that's our job.
And
Yeah.
our job is to do the best for both sides of the equation. Coming into my leadership position in Santa Fe, I really felt the lack of leadership resources, especially in the veterinary medicine space. At that point, there wasn't the Amy Newfields of this world. There wasn't a lot of these veterinary leadership resources that I love so much. There wasn't podcasts about veterinary leadership. There just wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, and I came into it really kind of fresh, very much not knowing much. That was pre-MBA and pre everything else, and I really felt the weight of that role to the point where I was like, "Man, nobody else needs to go through this," and that's actually the impetus for when I wrote my first book, which really was a cry for help. Being in middle management, right? Being stuck between our upper level management, our owners, and my team, and just trying to do the best for both and trying to give someone the resources so that they don't have to completely reinvent the wheel for
Yeah.
managing a team. And what I'll say is that just getting that off my chest and trying to put thought to all of the different parts of the leadership that I was really experiencing, it was absolutely one of those things where I was like, "Oh, thank God I got that out."
Yeah.
Many things have changed, and certainly my thought process and overarching beliefs have changed. If we put a lot of time and effort into what we actually believe and how we're going to operate as leaders, we're already better than the vast majority of leaders out there, right? And so I think honestly, it's one of those things where imposter syndrome is a real gift. If we don't feel quite up to the task, we're going to constantly work to be good enough to be doing the task. And that's the real gold in what we're doing.
Yeah. Before we jump back in, quick ask. If you're watching or listening and haven't subscribed yet, can you please take a second to check and hit subscribe? It's free and it's simple and it's the best way to support the show and it helps keep us going. And honestly, thank you so much for being here in a strange way. You're part of this history. You're on this journey with me, and I'm really grateful. So, shifting gears just a little bit,
Mm,
CE on the sea.
mm,
Tell us
one of
everything.
my
How did this
favorite
idea?
topics.
Yeah, I know, but like we've been talking about leadership for a bit, and you just talked about a book,
Yep.
and I kind of want to talk about that, but I feel like that's going to go down a rabbit hole, and I I'm worried to go down that rabbit hole right this second. So I don't want to totally skip on this CE on the sea. So I'm shifting.
Shift.
Tell us everything. How did this idea go from a dream to the ocean?
Back in 2015, I was on the VSPN message boards and I thought to myself, why don't we have CE on a cruise? I've never been on a cruise. I would really like to go on a cruise. No, that's not true. I had been on a cruise and I really liked it. I wanted to go on another. I put it in the chat boards, and my good friends Moira and Casey, who owned Vet Tech Life at the time, spoke up and said, "We're planning one. Would you like to be part of our planning?" And I said, "Absolutely. That sounds amazing." So jumped on board with them. I at the time had my consulting firm, and so as part of my consulting firm, we formed an alliance and started running CE on the Sea. Now we are in sailing number 7, and that leaves January 5th through the 10th this year out of Cape Canaveral. There are still cabins available. There are still registrations available. So come on board if you guys are hearing this and want to. We are going to the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas, which are going to be amazing. My daughter and I have already picked out our shore excursions. We are going to go swim with piggies. We are going to go to a capybara cafe.
Oh my god.
I'm so very excited about this. And I think we're going to go see rays. I absolutely love the options. When we get back to Port Canaveral, we're gonna do an excursion over to Nassau to see the space station, shuttle launch, all that kinda good stuff. We do 2 days of race-approved CE while we're at sea, and then we do the shore excursion days. We go roam around other countries and go on adventures. It's incredible and super fun. One of the most powerful things that I've ever been part of is every cruise, before we start the first lecture, we announce that we're gonna have everyone who has a first time of doing things let us know. You would be amazed. There are people oh, I get teared up every time I talk about this. As a CE by technicians for technicians, there's just not a lot of that out there that are national
Yeah.
CEs. This was really an opportunity to try and get our technicians who maybe don't get an opportunity, and VAs and CSCs, who maybe don't have as much time off to travel and have continuing education that's not just in a cold conference room with a cold buffet. Amazing food and amazing adventures, just really incredible CE things like how to do local blocks and anesthesia escape rooms was super fun last year. All kinds of incredible CE and really clinically relevant things that you can take home and use tomorrow. And they're all presented by VTSs or the equivalent. And when we do these, this lecture, when we do the firsts, it's really impactful just because of the fact that we have technicians who have never seen the ocean, never left their state, never been on a flight before, have never been on a airplane. Sorry.
Yeah.
Who have
Yeah.
never seen a dolphin, never seen a pelican, like, just the incredible amount of life experiences that people who maybe would not have gotten an opportunity to have these life experiences now have. It's incredibly impactful to be part of something like that. A couple years ago when Casey and Moira decided to retire and leave vet tech life to me, I work every single day hoping that I can bring as much to it as they did and continue their legacy of providing incredible continuing education to veterinary technicians.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. I have done some work with Blend Vet, and I like the way you talk about hearing these stories, that passion and emotion feels like I can feel it from you through the screen, feels very much like the same kind of feelings we get when we hear these stories from kids that wouldn't normally get the experiences they get when they are in the room with the doctors and technicians volunteering their time to be with these kids, and we hear their stories, and it is so moving to hear those stories. I imagine it's a very similar kind of, not the same but similar kind of emotion, and like I said, I can feel it through the screen, so it brings that kind of feeling to me when I'm listening to you. It really is amazing to be able to bring something to the community, particularly in situations when they aren't aren't situations where they would be able to normally have that situation. It also makes me think of in the companies that I've worked for, we typically have meetings where the managers come to one particular location, and there's often a handful of managers who won't travel because of anxiety or things like that. It always makes me sad for them because they don't get to experience being offsite and being with everyone else. Every time I have conversations with people like you that and everyone else that are bringing people together, it makes me think more about how do we get those people who won't go? How do we interact with them? Because they're missing that. They're getting in their own way. I have anxiety and I understand that, but I also understand because I've done some work to be in person for things. I understand what I was missing because of those roadblocks. So I just keep thinking about how do we get them? And not that I have an answer for that, but it's just something that came to mind while you were talking. I want everybody to be able to experience that feeling.
Well, and I think one of the things that make this just a little bit more approachable is the fact that you're getting to explore outside of your own country. You're getting to explore outside of your comfort zone, but you're doing it with 115 of your best friends, right? Like you're doing it in a group that is supportive and small in the great wide world. And I've had a couple of folks who said, I never would have done a cruise in a million years because I can't imagine what that would feel like to come onto a cruise ship and not know anyone.
Yeah.
And the reality is we all have dinner together, and you get such an entrenched view of veterinary medicine when you sit with your speakers after they've done an amazing job of imparting CE. And one of the things that I think creates new leaders, whether it be a VTS, whether it be a CVPM, whatever that is having tangible conversations with leaders who are one step above you and who are 12 steps above you. You have to see what the top of the tower looks like, and you have to see how to get to the next rung of the ladder. When we're thinking about this, coming into this powerhouse group of technicians and veterinarians and veterinary assistants and CSCs who've either taken a step farther than you and can now become part of your tribe, part of your network, or the folks who are 10 steps, 10 rungs higher than you, who you now see what that looks like, see what their journey has been like, and can map your journey to look like that. They're part of your network too. Like, I've never been in a room with a VTS who ever said, "Oh my gosh, no, you can't have my email or my son." We are very much all about how do you excite the next person to do this so that we're not,
Yeah.
how do we make sure that the small pond of veterinary medicine is constantly growing. I love the idea of being part of a continuing education event where every ounce of what we do is adding to someone's journey and potentially reigniting the fire. Every time I get a little bit like, "Oh my goodness, I don't feel like it today." If I go to a conference, that completely resets my balance, right? I come back from a conference and I have 15 ways of doing something that I didn't have before, and I have excitement to do something a little bit different, and I have the excitement of someone new that I've met that was really inspiring. And honestly, it's one of those situations where if we don't have those things, we are gonna have short-lived careers. Have to
Yeah.
have that reignition of our fires.
What happens when they get off the ship? You said this is the seventh one. So they are together. There's 100 plus people. They are eating dinner. They're going on excursions. They are all together this whole time. Then what?
Then what? I will tell you, everyone's journey is a little bit different. I come out of every cruise with 70 new Facebook friends. Being that close or entrenched with some of the speakers, there is follow-up in terms of just, I had this much information, and now I'm implementing this in my practice, but I feel close enough to this person to ask questions. A good example, Leslie Wereshek came on our cruise. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but she is the goddess of all things high flow oxygen. And a couple of my team members reached out to her for step by step instructions once we've gotten our high flow oxygen machine. She actually did our CE for that. I think that type of connection is something that's unmeasurable, really. And I've got tight friends who came as families of cruise members at this point, right? Like my tattoo artist, if I ever get another tattoo, will be a tattoo artist in Madison who came with Sarah, one of our speakers. There's a million different examples of the connections that we were able to make, and the international connections. Still have the phone number from our Haitian pool guy. We still occasionally WhatsApp back and forth when he finds a funny meme about vet med. I guarantee you I'm the only person he sends that to. You make the world just a little bit of a smaller place, and in such an incredibly divided world, we need to do that as often as we possibly can.
I love that. You have reinvented yourself multiple times in the profession. What keeps you stepping into this next version of you?
I think that it's less about reinventing myself and more about reevaluating where I need to be. And coming out of operations was a huge reinvention for me. I came out of operations and I just knew that I needed a break from managing all things. We had 5 natural disasters within the past year. I just needed a break from all things.
Yeah.
And I was very blessed to have the connections that I have, and for my CEO, Corey, to offer a completely new role to me in sales. I still get to do the things that I really enjoy in terms of helping people in their career paths. In this case, we do staffing in South America. So we actually create virtual veterinary assistant roles for folks in South America. We're giving them an incredible opportunity because it's the best role, both pay wise and in being paid in US dollars. We're helping an entire, generation of folks in South America through also helping veterinary practices in the US do all kinds of things that need virtual offboarding so that our teams can do more on the floor. And when I'm thinking about that, it's such an incredibly different role, but also I look at the opportunity to utilize all of the contacts that I've made over 30 years of vet schools, going to conferences, speaking at different things, and knowing people from having employed them or being employed by them, all kinds of different connections.
Yeah.
And it's just an incredibly fun and exciting thing to be able to leverage my experience in a completely different way. And I will say that I'm still getting to do some of the things that really fill my cup in terms of the management and in terms of helping practices look at their P&Ls, because we obviously try and save them money on the lay staff labor and things like that. Gives me a real opportunity to do all of the things that I enjoy, but in a very different way, and potentially cut out some of the things I didn't enjoy about operations. And I think the biggest thing that I really challenge everyone to do is once a year, sit down and write down your priorities. Look at how your current role is supporting or not supporting those, and think about how you can reformat your life to support those. And I think one of the things that, we all struggle with is just fiscally and financially, like how do we ensure we get where we need to be to retire? I hear all too often, well, I'm in this role and my boss won't give me a raise. I totally understand, where they're coming from because times are tight. You need more to make things work better. But a lot of times, what we have to do is we have to think outside that box and really think about reinventing ourselves to something else, whether it be, and I really hope that everyone can reinvent themselves back into a veterinary role. But if that's not the case, you know, maybe it's a different practice. Maybe it's a different type of veterinary role. Maybe it's working remotely in a veterinary role. Maybe there's just a million different things that we can do that pushes us just a little bit out of our comfort zone, but into a more comfortable zone.
Tell me a little bit about that because you run businesses outside of vet. How does that play into what you're doing and how did that come to be? Is that a creative thing? And does that help what you do in vet med? Is that completely separate? What is that about?
It used to be pretty separate, but what I will tell you is that I took a dose of my own medicine and I split a virtual assistant with another friend. So, not completely outside of what I do, but definitely gives me an opportunity to see my own company at work and really support my other companies. I do vacation rentals. We have a couple different places for vacation rentals. We currently have one in Puerto Rico, which is the coolest place you've ever been in your entire life. There's more horses than people. There's the brightest bio bay in the entire world. There is 121 beautiful beaches on a 21-mile island, and the best food that you've ever had, fresh rock lobsters picked right out of the ocean and grilled up for you, and just a truly natural wild beauty. Not particularly luxury, but everything is really nice on that island. The weather is perfect. It's always 85 degrees, and the night is always clear skies, and the rum comes in little drink pouches so you can take it to the beach. Like, the world is perfect on Vieques, Puerto Rico. And then we have a geodesic dome house with a lofted second bedroom so that When you're in bed up in the lofted second bedroom, it's 360-degree windows, and you can see the northern lights dance above your bed as you're cozy in your blankets. Or you can go downstairs and make dinner and watch the moose wander through the yard, or you can wander down the street and go fishing for some of the best salmon that you've ever had in the number 3 salmon fishing river in America. We look for places that are incredibly affordable because obviously I'm coming from a technician's salary, so have to find things that I can really afford. We look for, off-grid luxury, so places that are really gonna stun you for just the beauty and the surroundings of them. We're in the process now of working on an 80-acre glamp ground that will have bell tents and school buses, converted school buses, vintage trailers, and tree houses.
Fun.
Yeah.
I've seen the Northern Lights one. That's in Alaska.
Yes.
I've seen pictures of that, and I'm like, I don't know where that is, but I want to go there.
We just got some
And
Northern Lights pictures above the Dome House. It's called In a Nutshell, Squirrel
yeah,
Street. It's pretty incredible.
yeah, it's cool to see you posting that stuff and knowing that you're also in vet med. It just shows that the world is your oyster, if you will, right? Like you're only it's only as small or as big as you make it. And so I hear people making comments like, I can only do so much, but why? It goes back to your statement before of asking more questions. Maybe that is even to yourself of the sky's the limit, right? What's stopping you from doing more? Is it because you need more money? What's stopping that? Is it because of your current employment? Is there some other thing that you can do? Do you need to expand your network? Can you ask some people? Do you need some financial advisement? There's resources. Sometimes when I talk to people and ask more questions, they haven't explored things and they're just thinking very linear that they have to just go to work, get a job, and that's their only option when there's so many more options and you're proof of that.
I talk to people all the time who have a million reasons why they can't do something. But the reality is that there's a lot of ways around that. None of this is bragging. This is only talking in terms of, gosh, I want to give you this little tidbit because you can do this yourself. But for example, our Alaska house, we bought that with $40,000. It's one of those situations where it is worth 3 times that now. I used a HELOC loan on my current residence or to do the construction. And it's one of those situations where now, that place will rent for $300 to $600 a night, and it is constantly paying for itself, effectively paying for us to have another place to be, and it's growing its own value, and it's just a really incredible feeling to know that there's that opportunity. Our place in Vieques, Puerto Rico, I bought that on owner financing, so because of the fact that I couldn't get additional loans, I talked to the owner and gave him a little bit down, and the rest is paid over time, renting in order to pay for its mortgage. And that's just a really incredible piece of knowledge, knowing that you can stretch what you can do by thinking outside the box as to how you're actually approaching it. Our
Yeah.
current house, this house in Milwaukee, it's 100-year-old historical mansion. It was on the market in a foreclosure and listed completely inappropriately, and we came to look at it, and it was after looking after hundreds and hundreds of houses, and because of the fact that it is effectively a single house duplex, triplex, weirdly listed house, all 21 rooms of it was listed as a two-bedroom house. Coming into it, we really understood that we could make the backspace into an efficiency and it could help pay for the mortgage. And beyond that, because it was on foreclosure, we got it for almost nothing. We got it for, I want to say, $180,000. I got that in a full mortgage. I didn't have to have anything down, because of the fact that I did the type of loan that I did. And because I did the type of loan that I did, I could even count the rental income from our backspace against what I would have had to show that I could rent. And there's so many opportunities like that because duplexes and triplexes are actually valued less per square foot than normal single family houses, if you don't mind living just a little bit differently, you can be a homeowner in some of these high cost of living areas. And if you don't mind thinking just a little bit differently, maybe this house has been sitting on the market and you have to do some work on it, or maybe this house has been sitting on the market because it's a duplex and that owner is open to potentially working with you on owner financing. Those are things that if you just think a tiny bit outside the box, you can really define what your life looks like instead of your life defining you.
Now, for somebody who is heard all the things you just said
Yes.
and is glassed over, like, I don't know any of the words that she just said,
Yes.
maybe is not interested necessarily in real estate,
Yes.
but has an interest
Yes.
and goes to Google and is overwhelmed because honestly, real estate could be very overwhelming
Absolutely.
too. Is there guidance or something that you would say to that person as a starting point?
I think the biggest starting point, no matter what you want to do, is find someone who's doing it well and reach out to them because there is no one that I know who's like, I'm not going to talk to you about that. Everyone who gets a kick out of what they do, who enjoys what they do, is willing to talk to you about that. If any of the things that I said resonate with you, or something that, you have XYZ that you want to do that has nothing to do with any of that, reach out to someone, myself included, and we'll try and get you the best resources we possibly can. I'll do some soft intros to people that you really should know to do whatever you want to do. I have a good friend, Alan, who actually ran small business classes and now runs a podcast called The Rebel Entrepreneur. Do a couple listens to that and really take in the fact that he talks about starting entrepreneurship, starting small businesses with no money, and how to make sure that all of the things we do are done in a way that's sustainable and not going to drag you down. This is not an MLM. This is, hey, I really want to do something that I'm going to enjoy doing long term. And here's the 20 different ways of thinking about it to make it something that is a little bit easier and has little bit less barrier to entry to doing it.
I'm going to shift again because I think that we could probably talk all day, but I want to respect your time. I have a couple of fun little rapid fire
Ooh, I
questions
love
and then we'll probably wrap it up. Coffee or tea?
tea all the way, every day.
I am coffee all day. Favorite emergency skill to teach?
Long line catheters.
Mm.
Mm.
What's always in your scrub pocket or what should be?
Well, a Sharpie, but there's never one in my scrub pocket because they've all gotten washed the day before.
That's fair.
Yeah,
You were going to say because somebody stole it, but okay.
also that.
What is one thing every tech should stop apologizing for?
Advocating for good medicine.
Yes, agreed. Dream CE on the sea destination.
Are you ready? I'm gonna spill some tea.
Mm-hmm.
The dream destination, and I've heard it over and over again, is Alaska, and in 2027, we are going to Alaska in June.
Mm. In June of 2026?
2027.
Okay.
Information will be dropping soon, but that's
Okay.
my little pre
Amazing.
pre-excitement.
So the dream CE destination, and it's not going to be a dream anymore.
It's
It's going to
not a
happen.
dream anymore.
If you were not in vet med tomorrow, what would you build?
I have always wanted to build a tiny home village, and I went halfway down that path until we found out that the place we had chosen had a very dirty title. So I think I would go back to that dream
Okay.
of having a tiny home village, probably in Tierra Amarilla, New Mexico, as soon as I found a clean titled place to do it.
Lastly, because I ask everyone this question, a book that you would recommend every single person on this planet to read.
Quit Like a Millionaire by Christy Shen,
Why?
because it gives you a roadmap to getting out of the quagmire, Start investing. It gives you a roadmap to investing that is absolutely foolproof, like a map of how to do it. And honestly, it's one of those situations where it's just so fiscally and scientifically based. I was really impressed with it top to bottom. Plus, it's written by a female. So, shout out to
Love
the
it.
ladies with all the money knowledge.
Is there anything we didn't talk about today that you really want to share?
Let me share this. I would love for you guys to go over to FedTech Life Financial Fitness because we're constantly sharing tips, tricks, all the things there. I love that we have a community of people who are just interested in help each other getting to retirement and getting financially fit. Check us out on Vet Tech Life. Check us out on Vet Tech Life CE on the C. Check out the super cool places to stay on Cronin's Castles. And In a Nutshell is one of them, and Vieques Sea House is the other. And travel more. Check out ways to travel. If you haven't heard of travel hacking, um, Choose Financial Independence is one of the best places for resources for that, and that is a phenomenal way to travel for free as long as you're fiscally responsible with credit cards. They also have incredible financial education tools that are all free as well. So good stuff. And if you resonated at all with the real estate conversations that we had, go check out Bigger Pockets. I cannot remember the episode number that we were on, but we were on Bigger Pockets and Choose a Five for Cronin's Castles. But go check out that. And we didn't get to talk about it much, but check out my new company. It is called Team. It is virtual veterinary assistants sourced from South America, helping you do the stuff that our technical team does not need to be doing, like calling callbacks and taking overflow phone calls and helping our doctors scribe so we can get out on time and all of these amazing things so that our teams on the floor can do more.
Is there anywhere people can find you other than what you just outlined?
Wow. LinkedIn, you can stalk me on LinkedIn all you want, but if you pin Kelly Lynn Cronin, you will very likely get a lot on me. I am not a mystery author and I am not a photographer.
Well, your photos of Alaska are beautiful. So
That's our next door neighbor, Steve.
shout out to Steve.
Shout out to Steve.
I thank you for reminding us that leadership is a skill and an adventure all the way.
I love it.
You are absolutely changing what's possible for veterinary teams, and I'm grateful that we get to amplify this mission together.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Absolutely.